this is a skincare channel. However, scalp is skin, and a lot of us suffer from dry, itchy scalp. So let's talk about it. Say your scalp is dry. What you're gonna do is just gonna reach into the cabinet, pull out some oil, grease your scalp, and everything will be fine, right? Wrong! That oil might be feeding the culprits that are making your scalp dry. So what should you be using to treat dry scalp? Because you use the wrong thing and you can actually make the situation worse. We're gonna find out, so keep watching. To help us sort through all of this with science, board-certified dermatologist Dr. Aguh is back on the channel. Now, she already done been on the channel and snatched our edges, telling us that biotin doesn't work and some other bombs that she dropped in gym, so make sure you check out that video, after you finish watching this one. Dr. Aguh is the director of the Ethnic Skin Program and associate professor of dermatology at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and she's a new mama, so congrats to her and her family. Now let's talk scalp, because it's actually not even dry in the first place. As you see, mine is easy to access here. Still on the fence about these braids. I feel like, they could be a little bit more. I'll put a little bit more in them, but you probably won't see them much. So let's phone Dr. Aguh. Just had a baby. Congratulations.
A little girl, baby
Oh
Zara.
my gosh.
Yes.
Nice. Let's go into dry scalp. There are a lot of things that I learned about dry scalp, like, okay, like you got dandruff. It's not product buildup. You got a little dandruff. Boom.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. So what actually causes dry scalp?
Yeah, great question. Because you're right. It is dandruff. And the reason that's important is because if you see dry skin, you're like, oh, I'm ashy. You put a little moisturizer on and that's it. The scalp is actually very different. In fact, you can get flaky scalp from your scalp being too oily. So it's peeling and you see skin, but it's actually excess oil. So that's why when you do things like you put more coconut oil or you put more olive oil and you're just like, and it might feel good right then, but then the next day it's back or it's even worse, right? It's because dry scalp is actually dandruff. And what dandruff is it's inflammation of the skin. And so this inflammation comes from yeast that lives on your scalp. All of us have this yeast, right? But for some of us, our scalp hates the yeast more than others. And the yeast is actually feeding off of the oil that our scalp produces. So that's why the yeast always comes back, because we're always producing that scalp oil because we always have those sweat glands present, right? And so let's say you have a buildup of yeast and your scalp is like, oh my God, I hate it. It starts to create this peeling of the skin. Think about it almost like eczema, right? Think about like dry skin, ashy skin versus eczema. Eczema is actually skin inflammation. And some people put dandruff under the eczema umbrella. And so whenever you're going to treat dandruff, you can treat it through one of two ways. You can treat the yeast. So you can be like, okay, I'm going to get rid of the yeast so my scalp's not irritated. Or you can actually just treat the reaction or the inflammation. So over-the-counter products like the Head & Shoulders Royal Oils line, a lot of those products, their active ingredient is something called zinc pyrithione. Zinc pyrithione is an anti-yeast agent. Most dandruff shampoos are anti-yeast agents. They're doing nothing about the inflammation. Most things that you're going to get when you come to a dermatologist's office are actually going to target the inflammation. We're going to give you things like a steroid oil or steroid cream. Same thing that we would do for eczema, we're going to do for the scalp. One of the things that can be very frustrating is that dandruff, it really varies. For some people, it's very short-lived, right? So some people may notice that they start a birth control pill and their hormones are a little bit different, and that may affect how their sweat glands produce sweat. And so maybe the sweat is tastier to the yeast. And so people notice, oh my God, I went on birth control, my dandruff got worse, right? Or I was pregnant and my dandruff got worse, or it became worse after I had my baby, right? So you can have these life changes or diet changes even that may change how your sweat is produced, and that may affect your dandruff. But for a lot of people, it can be a lifelong issue, right? So it's not necessarily that you're doing something wrong. It's just kind of a part of how your skin functions and operates.
As Black people, we are good for greasing down the scalp. Oh, you got dinner. Oh, grease the scalp.
Grease
that scalp, right? I've actually learned that sometimes some of those oils can make the situation worse. So what's that about?
Yeah, because you're honestly like putting more food for the yeast, right? They like the oil. That's why they're there. And so that's why I tell people it's like it's not that your scalp is dry, which is why I don't use the term dry scalp because it's very confusing, right? Because anything else that's dry requires moisture, and so that's why I try to just like educate people that this is actually a scalp reaction, a skin reaction, and it's not actually that your scalp is thirsty. It's that it's irritated, it's inflamed, and that's why it's peeling.
Are there certain oils that people can use
Yes.
to
Yes.
alleviate dandruff, and what are those?
Yeah, so there are some home remedies. So tea tree oil, I would say, is the number one oil that is going to show some efficacy against dandruff. It's probably working a little bit against the yeast, but it's actually an anti-inflammatory treatment. So remember, if you're going to use tea tree oil, you have to dilute it, right? Tea tree oil is strong. It's an essential oil to medicine. So diluted tea tree oil. Apple cider vinegar can also be effective against dandruff. It's acidic. The yeast don't like that acidity, and so that can also treat dandruff. So those are kind of the two my favorite over-the-counter remedies. I would highly avoid coconut oil, especially directly to the scalp, because the yeast are really going to like coconut oil, and olive oil. So those are two oils that I would have you avoid applying directly to the scalp if you have dandruff. I would have you do the tea tree oil or do the apple cider vinegar rinse.
Walk us through it, because sometimes people need that special helping hand with the 1, 2, 3 with the steps and how to do it at home.
Yeah.
So, okay, with the tea tree oil, you said to dilute it. Is there like a certain amount of water or what?
One thing that you should remember is when you're going to get essential oils, make sure it's the good stuff, right? It's probably not going to be at the beauty supply store, right? Whole Foods, Vitamin Shop, GNC, these places where you can get like vitamin supplements, Amazon, you can see some reputable sources. Tea tree oil is really going to come in a small bottle. So you can use something like 3 to 5 tablespoons of tea tree oil in, a full bottle of grapeseed oil or olive oil. Some of these recipes are available in my book as well.
Nice.
I do have a new book coming out called 90 Days to Beautiful Curly Hair. This is just for people with curl types 3A through 4C hair. And I have some of those oil mixtures in there as well.
You mentioned don't use the olive oil directly on the scalp, but if we're using the tea tree oil and you're putting it in the olive oil, how does that work?
The tea tree oil is enough to overcome that essential oil mixture.
Ah,
So you do
okay.
it's and because the thing is olive oil, grapeseed oil, they're not going to make the dandruff so much worse. Really, it's just that they're not going to help, right? And so if you have dry scalp and you're putting olive oil on, or you're putting grapeseed oil or coconut oil repeatedly, you will notice that over time, it's definitely not going to get better. And over a lengthy amount of time, it may get slightly worse, but it's not going to make it worse very quickly. And with the tea tree oil in there, it should help clear things up. These are recommendations really for the mildest forms of dandruff. If you have dandruff that's really bad, that it's almost starting to look like psoriasis, you really have to see a dermatologist, because that severity of dandruff requires prescription medication.
Really great segue, which was going to be my next question. Like, what are the treatments when you go to see a dermatologist, and then what can they typically cost?
Yeah, absolutely. So for scalp psoriasis or very severe dandruff, our go-to treatments are going to be steroid preparations that you put directly on the scalp. Usually what I recommend is I recommend a steroid oil for curly hair types, because it's going to interact a lot more nicely with curly hair, as opposed to, let's say, a steroid solution, which is a go-to for people with straight hair. Steroid solutions are alcohol based, and they will dry out curly hair and break it. So it's something I teach dermatologists as well. Things that are going to work for straight hair, not necessarily going to work for curly hair. But I like steroid in an oil or steroid in an ointment. And then you do grease the scalp. So don't grease the scalp with, Blue Magic. I love Blue Magic. Blue Magic is for the hair, right? But when you get a steroid ointment, I am going to talk to you about parting your hair in sections and kind of greasing the scalp like this. And that's how you're going to do it. And you're going to do that a few times a week until the flaking goes away.
Okay, how much does something like that cost?
All of those should be covered by insurance completely. And so if you do have insurance, you should expect to pay a low copay, $5 to $15. If you don't have insurance, we can still choose options that are incredibly affordable. So still in the $10 to $15 range.
The thing with like dandruff products that I have to say that I've experienced in the past until, I kind of found out what was the right thing to use in my hair. They're typically really drying.
Yes.
They may help with the dandruff, but then now my hair is
Yes.
dry and brittle and it's breaking off.
Yes.
So what are some things besides the ZPT that people should look for in, like, because I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to be sitting here mixing up anything in the kitchen. I'm going to go to the store and buy something. So
Right.
what are some things that people should look for?
Absolutely. So one thing that you have to remember about shampoos, and again, all of this stuff that I'm talking about today, I'm teaching dermatologists as well. So the thing about shampoos are incredibly effective. We consider them to be the most effective products to treat dandruff. The issue is they're only effective when they're used multiple times a week, right? The only people who are shampooing their hair multiple times a week are people with straight hair. Right.
Right.
And again, I try not to break it down into race because you might be a Black woman with very straight hair. Right. And so maybe you shampoo your hair 3 times a week. And in that case, shampoos can be effective, but they are very drying. You're right. And so I like zinc pyrithione because you'll find that zinc pyrithione preparations are more likely to have conditioning agents in the bottle. Another ingredient that's very popular, selenium sulfide, so you can find that in products like Selsun Blue, are actually, to me, too drying for curly hair. So I would prefer that patients stick with zinc pyrithione as opposed to selenium sulfide directly on curly hair. The prescription shampooing products that we have a shampoo called ketoconazole shampoo. It's probably the most popular shampoo that's prescribed for this condition. It is way too drying for curly hair. So I avoid it at all costs for curly hair. So I know everybody can't see me as a dermatologist. If you see a dermatologist and you have curly hair and you have dandruff and they prescribe you ketoconazole shampoo, ask them instead for something called cyclopirox shampoo. Cyclopirox is used less commonly, but it's actually a lot safer for curly hair. If you're out in the boonies and you need something to bring to your dermatologist, ask them for cyclopirox shampoo. But if you're shampooing your hair once every 2 weeks or once every 4 weeks, a shampoo's not going to do that much anyway. It's just like, if I gave you an acne cream and you were like, oh, okay, I can put it on once every 4 weeks. Is it going to clear my skin up? It's not, right?
No,
You really have to use it every day, every other day for it to work. But get the shampoo, bring it to the salon with you. When you're taking out your protective styles, you can use it, but you're still going to need something like a steroid ointment or an oil that you can apply 3 to 5 times a week to really get rid of that dandruff.
I have personal experience with the Head and Shoulders Royal Oils line. I absolutely love it. I think it's a good mix of, because I've had dry scalp before,
Right.
and I found it very beneficial for me. I think it's a good mix of the active ingredient to help with the dandruff, but it also has a lot of the moisturizing and conditioning ingredients to keep my hair nice. But I will say that they have this scalp cream that I find like
The scalp
the scalp elixir. I usually only use the scalp elixir like if I have like not boneless braids. What's it called? Knotless braids.
Yeah.
I'm hungry, so I'm thinking about chicken wings. When I have like the knotless braids, I'll use the scalp elixir to kind of like soothe my scalp. Yeah. And then this cream I love like for every day because it's like a moisturizer that you can put right on your scalp, and it definitely helps with the issue. Would that be kind of like because that's something I would use every day. I'm not going to shampoo my hair every day, but I'll put that in my hair every day.
And I'll start by saying I don't have any financial relationships with any hair companies. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep it like that because when I recommend stuff to patients, I want them to feel like I'm recommending it because it works. Head and Shoulders Royal Oils line is one of the products in my new book that I recommend. And the thing that I love about the Royal Oils line is that it really keeps in mind the things that we as women with curly hair, many of us being Black women, do to our hair. So in addition to the shampoo, conditioner, co-wash, they have creams which we know, which we're already putting in our hair every day, and those actually have the active ingredient. So right now it's the only hair care line that I know of that has zinc pyrithione in non-wash based products, like a cream, an elixir, things that you can apply while you have extensions in, and things that you can apply just like when you're like stylers, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely, those are things that you put in 3 to 5 times a week. You may find that you're using something like the Royal Oils line, and you don't have to see a dermatologist, right?
Right.
If you have mild dandruff. If you have more moderate to severe disease, you're going to have to go up and go see a dermatologist. But absolutely, all of those things will work quite well.
Yeah, I actually have worked with P&G in the past, and I think what really sold it for me was definitely being able to see Black dermatologists, Black scientists, Black hairstylists that came together to create that line. And I actually got to speak with the team. Dr. Rowe, I got to speak with Dr. Rowe, who was one of the scientists behind the line, and like just really understanding the science of it, definitely, and knowing that it was made with care by somebody that looked like us. Definitely sold me on it. And the fact that I actually use it and it works, of course, sold me on it as well. So
one thing I want to say, washing the hair is an anti-inflammatory process. Okay. Remember I talked about dandruff being inflammation. Some women will notice that if they stay in protective styles too long, right, and they're not washing their hair for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, that their dandruff is getting worse. It's because that scalp cleansing actually will decrease the scalp flake. It's going to decrease inflammation. So if you are in protective styles, get some of these apple cider vinegar rinses to use on your scalp while you're in the knotless braids, the box braids, the crochet braids, so that you can keep your dandruff under control. Some companies that have some great apple cider vinegar products are like Cantu and Girl Plus Hair, right? And so you can, and then even the Royal Oils line, like we talked about, you can apply those in between the braids. But if you can't get a full wash session in, do things like that so that your dandruff doesn't spiral out of control.
See, every time she comes on the channel, she just drops those gems. So Dr. Aguh has a new book out, 90 Days to Beautiful Curly Hair, which you can get a link to pre-order it in the description box, or order it outright depending on when you happen to stumble upon this video. Also, I'm going to leave in the description box some information on where you can find Dr. Aguh online, her practice. All that information is going to be all up in the description box. Now, you guys, if you need to see a dermatologist for scalp issues, hair loss, anything like that, it is so important that you do your research and making sure that person has plenty of receipts, that they know what they're doing when it comes to black hair, particularly curly, kinky, coily black hair. And sometimes y'all be like, how do I get the receipts? A lot of it you can find online. You can look up reviews, you can try to get a referral from your primary care doctor, you can ask friends and family, colleagues, so on and so forth, to see if you can find someone in your area that has the receipts on what you need to get done. But I'm telling you, do your research, because you do not want them prescribing the right thing for your scalp, but the wrong thing for your hair. So tell me in the comments, what did you learn in this video? And make sure you stay tuned, because pretty soon Dr. Aguh is gonna be back on this channel rating protective styles. So does your style get an A? Does it get an F? Or what? So make sure you stay tuned, you subscribe to this channel and you don't miss it. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.